All the world's a stage, and men and women merely actors. William Shakespeare's As You Like It. But is theatre only about William Shakespeare? Definitely no. We have the Greeks, the Romans, the Italians, the French, the Spanish, the English, the Africans, the Indians. It all began with man's need to tell a story. We are immediately drawn back to Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, where he gives a brilliant example of men, our forefathers, before the age when words started being evolved, huddling together in caves, shadows being splayed on walls. A man gets up and tries enacting that of a lion. We have stories of the hunter and the hunted being enacted there, and right there, theatre began. Again, it's man's need to express himself. Join me as we take this journey back to the evolution, as we go down time towards Greek theatre, where it all began. The Greek theatre dates back to 6th century BC and goes back to Athens. It is also known as the Attic theatre. This is the model of a Greek theatre, if you can imagine. The flat, rectangular, double-storied place would be what you mean by a speaking place. This is where the actors stood. And this is what you call as a skene. The circular structure that you have here is where the chorus stood, and this is what you mean by an orchestra. Members of the audience sat over here in a semicircle, something that resembled an amphitheater, and this is called as the theatron. We need to remember that in most of the cases, we have the theatre carved into the hills as such. Plays were held during the day because daylight was crucial. Acoustic is supposed to be fairly good. Certain features of the theatre included Deus ex machina, which meant God on a machine. You had a beam-like structure with a basket attached on which a member who depicted himself as God could come down from upstairs or go up to the skies, elevation or descent according to the plot of the play. Deus ex machina literally means God on a machine. There were parts of the play where the playwright was not able to resolve, and suddenly you wanted a divine intervention, and this divine intervention would resolve all the conflicts that the play would be facing. So Deus ex machina was supposedly something that ancient playwrights used in abundance. One name we remember much would be Euripides. Another feature that was used by the ancient Greek theatre was echiclema. Remember, this is a time when death is not portrayed on stage, war is not portrayed on stage, famine is not portrayed on stage, but you need to, for the sake of the plot, show the audience that things have moved, someone has died. Dead bodies were kept on a wooden platform rolled in through the skene, and this wooden platform holding the bodies was what you meant by echiclema. A feature of Greek theatre were the masks that were worn by the actors. These were exaggerated masks, and all of them, whoever took part in the play, wore masks. Exaggerated, unhuman-like, large masks were worn to make them visible to a crowd who was sitting here. We need to remember that the members of the audience at times even dated to 20,000 people at a time. To cater to every one of these audience, the person who was standing here as a character had to be loud and had to be visible. To make himself visible, he would wear mask. And he would also have large high-heeled shoes, which were called as the katorni. These were large high-heeled shoes, which exaggerated his human form and almost raised him to a god-like form. This is crucial in a Greek theatre because members of the audience did not come here to watch a play, did not come here to listen to the story of an ordinary man. Rather, they came here to listen to the story of an immortal god. See, if at all there is a Greek hero that is portrayed here, that Greek hero had to be a god, and was only logical that the features of the god could be exaggerated with mask and with a katorni. Another thing that we need to remember is, since the number of people were limited, the members of the chorus ideally would be 12 to 15, varied from 12 to 50 if needed. But still the number of people who came as actors and who came as members of the chorus were quite limited. Because of that, you could be standing with the chorus, but you could step out as one of the prime actors and transformation could be done by mere removal of your mask. So mask featured in that way too. Another spectacular feature that we need to remember whenever we talk about Greek theatre would be the three unities. Now, how do we know so much about Greek theatre, something that happened or dated centuries back to 600 BC? None of this would have been possible if Aristotle's Poetics had not been there. So Aristotle's Poetics dates and clarifies a lot of these things. And in addition to this, Aristotle's Unities also tries bringing in, based on the Greek tragedies, three different unities: unities of time, unities of place, and unities of action. This forms to be the basis of all plays for a very long time, be it the Greeks, be it the Romans, be it the Italians, Spanish, till Shakespeare, or even after, the unities had to be fundamental. Now, what are the three unities? And why are they spectacular? The three unities, the first one would be unity of time, which means all the events that had to be shown on stage had to be shown in a 24-hour duration, which was logically understandable. You could not jump into the future, you could not somersault into the past, you had to stay at the present. That was the basis of Greek tragedy. And there you have the unity of time. Unity of place would mean there is no jumping as in Shakespeare from Venice to Greece. There is no jumping from one place to another. Stick to a place. What is permissible in 24 hours of a travel, you could do that, but nothing more than that. And the third one would be the unity of action. Unity of action ensured it that there were no subplots. There was only one main plot and you stuck to the main plot. Now, fundamentally, Greek theatre could be divided into tragedy, comedy, and satyr plays. Comedy, today we know of comedy from one man's work, which has sustained over time, that is Aristophanes. 11 works of comedy that were written by Aristophanes has stood over the test of time. Meander is supposed to have written almost 100 odd works, but unfortunately, the works were written in papyrus. Papyrus catches fire, and much of Meander's work we have lost to antiquity. So comedy during the 6th century BC was not considered as a superior genre as much as tragedy. Instead, it had the third level in the hierarchy. Usually, all the plays of a Greek theatre were held during the festival of Dionysius. Dionysius was the Greek god of wine and music and harvest. And the festivals of Dionysius were large affairs with hundreds of people pouring in from everywhere. Usually the festival of Dionysius had 3 plays of tragedy, 1 satire play, and towards the end a comedy being featured by the people. Comedy passed through 3 stages. One was old comedy, middle comedy, and new comedy. These were comedies of political and of personal satire. These were comedies of social satire. But more importantly, more than the comedies, we had the satire play. The satyr plays that we have over here spoke about a half human and a half goat-like creature. These were mythical beings who were known for their obscenity and sexuality. Exaggerated comedy was what you meant by a satyr play. The festival of Dionysius that we spoke about usually had competitions. The tragedians would pull in their tragedies together and the best 3 would be selected. The satyr plays would be performed later on and followed by the comedy. The word tragedy comes from the Greek word tragos, which means a goat song. This is usually connected with a choral hymn that was sung during the time of the festival called a dithyramb. Dithyramb ensured that people sang during the festival. This was a hymn that was sung by the people there. People would gather together. Incidentally, this happens to be the beginning of chorus too. People would gather together, they would sing together, and slowly out of this combined choral singing, individual actors started stepping out and dialogue started being created. Why was it called a goat song and why is it connected to Dionysius? To connect tragos, the word tragos also meant fermented barley, which was used for the beer that people drank during the period. Commoners drink. Since there was a lot of festivities and music and dance and wine drinking associated, Dionysius, the god of wine, also came to be represented by this word tragos. One fundamental feature of the Greek theatre was the chorus. Chorus were a 12 to a 50-membered group who were the representation of the psyche of the audience. There is a part in Antigone where Antigone walks in with the body of her brother and the chorus speaks about her. The 12-member chorus is in fact representative of the entire country of Thebes. Chorus was the connecting thread between the audience and the actors. They were people who were good at singing. They would sing, they would dance in unison, they would narrate, and all of this substantially contributed to the play. The chorus was linked organically with the play. It was not a mere interlude. We remember Aeschylus and his plays, which had almost half the play was done in choral odes. But on the other hand, Euripides had just 1/4 of his play done in choral odes. The number of choral odes that each writer weaved into the story did vary. Nevertheless, the chorus did exist as a fundamental part of the Greek play. The Greek tragedy was always in a verse form, a recitation form, a declamation form. This is not the voice of an ordinary person that we have over here. This was representative of kings, of hierarchy, of people in power. Pivotal to the notions and understanding of Greek tragedy, we have two notions that was pointed out by Aristotle. One was pity and the other one was fear. You felt pity for the character and you associated yourself with the God whom you saw in suffering. This again led to a fundamental understanding of the word suffering. The suffering that you went through in life, in existence, unknown, unnamed suffering that we all go through. But most often what happens is the suffering is held by a person without a vent to express. The emotions that are there deep down, bottled up within one's soul. And these emotions need a vent out. We come to the reason why tragedy was crucial to theatre. And not just theatre, why tragedy is crucial to all humanity. It's easy to laugh, it's easy to make a person laugh over a banana peel, but people always say it's much more difficult to make a person laugh by titillating him intellectually. That is why we say wit is intellectual humor, and to be a writer creating witticisms, that is a tricky job. But when it comes to tragedy, the reason why people went to see a play in a theatre, the reason why we still go to theatre to watch a tragic film is not because of pity or fear or the notion of suffering that we have over there. It's not because we empathize with the character, but it is because this ancient notion has stood over centuries and it will keep standing. This is the notion of catharsis. Catharsis is a Greek word of soul vomiting. In life, when we go through pain, we bottle it up within ourselves. We don't find a vent out anywhere. We keep it within ourselves. What happens when you walk into a theatre to watch a tragedy? You see the character going through pain. You empathize with the character's suffering. You feel sorry for the character. You feel pity for the character. And then those emotions that are there bottled within you find a vent for that character. When you walk out of stage or when you walk out of theatre today, your problems are still the same. All the issues that you left behind when you walked into the theatre are still there. But probably your approach to them might be a little different, because here within the walls of the theatre, you have cried out your emotions, or you have catered to your emotions and put a vent out to your emotions, and those bottled up exasperations that are there with you find a vent out. It is for this reason why people still, even today, pay money and watch a tragic movie. The ancient notion of catharsis still stands. We deal with suffering. If in the Greek theatre we dealt with the suffering of kings and queens, in life too we understand that this suffering has not come to an end. The relevance of the Greek theatre is that it teaches us to look into humanity. It taught us to understand and to look out at people around, look out and reflect life, and to look out and think about what it was to be human. There are much more diverse aspects that are there. But this was just the beginning.